care, lead, innovate, motivate, balance. These 5 tenets reveal ways of creating a more profitable and customer-centric pharmacy. What will you discover when you climb with RMS? Welcome, everybody. With me today is Samantha Timmermann Dryer. She's the pharmacy manager, and we'll call it pharmacy owner in training at Comprehensive Care Pharmacy. So you're looking at, welcome, first of all.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
And you're looking to purchase the pharmacy from your father. We're going to get into that, and we're going to get into really looking at both sides, as the seller as well as the buyer. But before we do that, I think you have a really interesting background, and I think that background has really helped you be in a position to do this. So would you describe to everybody what you've been up to?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm not a pharmacist, and that's quite, most people, when I'm talking to folks about what I'm buying the store, what my journey is going to look like, they say, well, you're not a pharmacist. Well, I say, well, I did the second best thing. I think I went to real life pharmacy business school, and I did that by the way of working for pharmacy development services and with Dan Benamos for the first 7-8 years of my career. And that was just like drinking from the water hose of working with Dan and Kelly Babcock and all those wonderful people, learning about what to do and what they didn't teach pharmacists in pharmacy school, and how to be on the business side, whether it was marketing, finance, leadership, accounting, how in the heck to manage people, some different profit growth strategies. So just really surrounded myself by some of the best leadership coaches and worked on helping market their programs. And so I think that was just a fantastic foundation. And then I went and moved and worked for Ananda Professional and built their marketing department. I actually just recently left there. I was there for 5 wonderful years, really got on the ground floor of that company. And our whole mission was to help independent pharmacy owners own the space of CBD, because there are so many players in that industry. And so we wanted something that was professional grade. So then it was learning how to sell products from a pharmacist professional perspective to a patient, and really learned on this consumer product goods, OTC strategies. So I've had my hands in a lot of different areas of the pharmacy and working with so many great pharmacy vendors, or like at PDS and with their conference. So I know a lot of folks. I know enough to be dangerous, as I like to say to the team. I have fabulous pharmacists here. And so I think that's really kind of prepared me to understand. Now, there's been some glitches and some mishaps, and we can talk about that a little bit just to kind of keep it real later. But it's, I think that's really prepared me, and has always made me super interested in, okay, what would it look like to actually put all these strategies I've been sharing for the last 10, 15 years into practice. And sure, it's not as easy as I always made it seem when I was on the stage in front of a couple of hundred pharmacy owners. And I think that's been really humbling and really exciting as well, because I think it's, whether we say pharmacy owner in training, because there is still an option where I may not do this. I really hope we'll go forward with it, but it's only going to make me an awesome resource somewhere else if I ever need to go there, because I've seen both sides now for sure.
For sure. Yeah. And so a lot of our viewers know this, and I think you know this because we've known each other from those early PDS days. But my family had multiple pharmacies. I worked in those pharmacies over the years, and I learned a lot about the front end side of the business, which eventually got me into the technology side and, and the operations side of the front end portion of the business. And since those days, in those early days of where cash was king in the pharmacy, and it was all about filling scripts and as many as you could fill and making a fortune, we all know those days are long gone. And now you have to focus on the things that you're talking about, that you've been teaching for years. And I've listened to pharmacists that are listening to these podcasts and these webinars in our Climb series and going to these conferences, and they all say, yeah, it's a little harder than what it sounds like on stage. So
absolutely, very humbling.
For sure. So let's just delve into this. Before we got started on the webinar, you commented that and you commented in the webinar that this still may not happen. You may not purchase the pharmacy, but this has been an experience, and you told me before that you wanted to see what this looked like. And so what was your goal here as you jumped in?
Yeah, I mean, because how do you go from a pretty like corporate, awesome, like working in the cannabis industry and all these fun things, living in this awesome loft in Lexington, Kentucky, to right back to living in a town of like 4,000 people and squatting at your parents' Airbnb. Like that's a big life change. And my husband and I were just about to get married and he lived in Connecticut. That's a big like life step to be like, hey, let's go do this. And my mantra in life, regardless of anything, has always been, I rather know than always wonder. So while working at PDS and working at Ananda and just being surrounded by the hundreds, if not thousands of pharmacy owners I've had some sort of connection with, it's like, you know what, I can do that. I can figure this out. You know, you see the impact that pharmacies have on people's lives in the communities. And I was like, I want that. I've always worked for mission-based companies. And I think this I saw as kind of my next thing. And, you know, I don't think it's a shock to anyone in the industry, but the climate of the industry has changed, right?
Right.
And so that's given us a little bit of pause, and especially my dad. He'll speak pretty transparently. He's like, I don't think I want you to do this, right? Like, because it's tough, right? And then we have to kind of peel back some onions there, but, you know, he's been in this for 30 years. He's tired, rightfully so. Like they've gone through that fight of that era of pharmacy. And I think I have a bit of a different perspective. You know, I was him 30 years ago with new, fresh ideas. And so my mantra has always been, I rather know than always wonder. And I've had such a supportive husband and parents who are like, okay, let's figure this out then. Let's try to figure it out. And I think the stabilizing piece in all of this and knowing that we still might say no is, okay, I'm getting it sales ready. I'm taking my entire industry knowledge and let's just put it into practice. And whether we're getting it sales ready for me to take over or we're taking it for someone else, it's still going to be a good decision and are still going to be putting the pharmacy in the best light for that seller's time. And whether you're doing a succession transition or anyone, you want to get your business ready for the sale. And that doesn't happen 3 months before you're ready to go to market with it.
Right.
That's two, I don't know, Brad, I would love your suggestion on that. That's probably 2-3 years, if not beforehand, but you're really getting your hands down and dirty that year and a half, 2 years beforehand. And so that's where we're at. So I've always said, yeah, go ahead, please.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I'm not sure there's a time frame on it. What I can say is this, it isn't at the last minute. The last minute's too late, but it really is an ongoing process. I remember when my dad told my brother and I, we were both in college, and we were looking at what did we want to be when we grew up, and he's like, don't be this, don't become a pharmacist. I know he regrets that he regretted that later, but because I think he would like one of the two of us to have taken over the business, but we both helped, right? And the thing that I've learned RMS has been around now for this, we're coming up on 25 years.
Wow.
And I tell my dad this all the time. No business is easy. You have to evolve at all the time. And you really have to be making the business ready to be sold all the time, because honestly, there's no difference between I don't think there's any difference between making the business ready to be sold and making the business a very viable, relevant business. You know, if you're doing that all the time and you're changing, but boy, business is hard. Pharmacy is hard. Business is hard. The technology world in pharmacy has changed dramatically over the last 25 years. And so I think you can't wait to the last minute and say, I'm going to sell. I'm going to make a bunch of changes. You need to be doing that all along.
And I do feel like it's been a little bit late in the game for us to be doing some of those, or, you know, coming in and it's seeing some of those, oh, I can kind of see why you're frustrated. Have we thought about doing it this way? Because my parents have had a very successful business and it's very admirable. And that's honestly,
right.
You know, to get on kind of the why side, because I always believe you should always ask yourself, why? Why am I wanting to do this? Is it because I'm expected to, or is it because there's that emotional connection? You know, that's why do I want to sell? Why do I want to buy? Why is any of it? And I mean, yeah, there's this succession of like carrying on a 30-year-old business, and there's it's makes sense and all of that, but I think it's where I'm kind of going with it. It's my why is because it helps the patients, of course, and if we're not here, who will be here? And two, I think it's the lifestyle. I've seen what my parents have been able to do and be able to provide, and it's wanting to really challenge myself to do that. And unfortunately, pharmacy is just not there anymore. So we have to kind of breathe in that fresh new life, and it's exciting, but you can tell they're frustrated because it hasn't evolved as much as it probably could have.
Right.
And
yeah, and I certainly didn't mean to make it sound like it's too late ever, because it's never
no,
too late. It just
no,
means there can be more work
mm-hmm.
involved to get it ready.
Yeah.
But it's never too late to change. It's never too late to adopt the things that are working. And that's what we're all here trying to do, right? You, me, so many people in this industry are trying to help bring to light the things that are successful, that we see other pharmacies, the successful pharmacies evolving to do. So, yeah,
I heard
go ahead.
yeah, I heard a phrase the other day. I was talking to Ben Coakley with Waypoint, who's like, they do like pharmacy advising and whatnot for on the financial side. And because they coined a phrase that I think I've been trying to tell my dad, it's like the pharmacy of tomorrow. I kept on saying pharmacy 2.0, like, Dad, you smashed it. And pharmacy 1.0, or probably pharmacy 27th version, I'm ready to go on to that 28th version. And it's going to look so different than what it is. We have to get our core fundamental things ready in the pharmacy, to your point, right? To make it ready and applicable to anyone, but then to navigate this new world. And that's where keeping up to date with technology and making sure you're working with all of these different vendors, to like, keeping your finger on the pulse and listening to podcasts like this, be like, all right, where's this going? Because if I'm going to buy this and keep status quo, it's not worth my time. It's not worth my energy. What's this new phase look like? And so, yeah, that's been the fun journey.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the journey.
Sure.
Let's talk about those things. What are some of the things that have been harder than you expected, from being on stage, telling people how to do it? What are some of those things?
So I say this with so much heart and love, and I hope if the team hears me, they might understand me just a little bit more. But it's been the managing of the people. And that's what I've heard for years and years and years at PDS. And, and from my perspective, I come from a very corporate world. While I still kind of always worked in the startup world, still very much so corporate, and the meaning of having access to certain resources or time for actual meetings, or like a certain level of kind of like, hey, everyone bring me some ideas on this, and then actually being able to kind of, people have the time and space to be able to do that. And so I've always worked in more corporate and creative settings. And here we're very much so a service-based workflow, almost like manufacturing-like. And so that's been I speak a completely different language. And so we're learning. And honestly, the best way I think I kind of cut my chops, if you will, is I threw myself in, and I was the cashier for, unfortunately, about 6 months because we had some staffing issues. But like, threw myself in, learned how to, I was accounting tech all throughout high school and such. So relearned that and relearned how to be a cashier, finding little things that we can improve. I'm a big believer in the 1% improvements from like Atomic Habits. I think it's James Clear. It's like, how can we just be 1% better? 1% improvement to make, it's not going to be the drastic change, but it's going to make your life easier. And just working the workflow myself, found those little 1% improvements to kind of say, hey, I'm not just here to be a corporate bot. I'm not here just to sit in the office and dictate all these changes, but like, let's feel this together. And that's helping, to answer your question. It's like, that's been the hardest thing, is not having access to the tools and resources I'm used to. And then how do I find space for a team that's used to working their shifts, helping them understand what this role, how their roles can evolve, and how we can all help each other.
And that we see that a lot. I'm sure you saw it at PDS, where stores don't have store meetings. And store meetings can be difficult to have because of the fact that you're on shift work. And so when you have this store meeting, and not everybody's working every day, so now somebody's going to come in on their day off, or how do you do that? And there's no one answer to that, but I will say this, you have to make it work. You have to
Completely.
figure out the way to do it. And that sometimes results in a little bit of overtime every month. But those meetings end up being, I have found uh, when we were doing it, they made all the difference in the world. It made everybody feel like they were part of a team.
Mm-hmm.
You got to teach a little bit. And like you said, you make small incremental improvements, and
Mm-hmm.
it matters, and the customers see it as well.
Mm-hmm. Completely. And I think the communication is the biggest thing. I mean, transparently, we still only have a 15-minute meeting, 15 minutes before the store opens on Monday. It's madness. It's not, I'm used to having at least an hour with my team every single day, like singularly focused. And so, I did bring in, they were always just like texting in a group thread with each other. And like some people were on it, some people weren't. And so I brought in an app called Homebase. I'm still yet to find like a pharmacy specific one, but it digitized schedules. It could allow them to clock in and out. We use a different system for that. But mainly it gave us a system where I could basically Slack or Teams, all that instant access messaging with everyone and do announcements that they had to say that they read. So I've been toying with a few things in there, but just being able to have that messaging system that was also captured in like kind of like an HR way that I could then manage versus all these like little baskets of notes sitting around the office or text messages here and email there. And that's been game changing for us. And I've also been toying around with the idea, I might do like a Monday morning recap and saying like, hey, here's everything we spoke about in the meeting in case the people weren't there. And then every morning, I've been trying, it's been a lot of work, but kind of like hey, here are my expectations for the day. Here to try to find, because like, how do I get people to break out of the workflow? I'm a firm believer of the amount of time you have is how long a project will take. So, okay, if you have, I kind of put special project time on everyone's calendars or on their schedules. I'm like, okay, if you have 1 hour on special projects time, here's what I want you to work on that. Versus otherwise I had to go physically tell them and find them. And I'll still hold them accountable during the day, but that kind of morning recap has been real helpful, especially when people are coming and going at different times. So that's
Yeah.
been a big thing change for us. But again, shift work, having to teach them how that my expectation is that we want them to respond to those messages.
So let's talk a little bit about what you're looking for as a new. I want to talk from both perspectives, but let's just start. We talked a little bit from the perspective of the seller, but from the buyer's perspective, what are some of the things you are evaluating to determine whether or not you want to do this?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, so we've had a bunch of like pro formas and stuff done by Cardinal and a few other resources in the industry and other people looking at it. And, cash flow is tight. Cash flow is tight. That's no secret in any pharmacy, right? I just sat through
Right.
Lisa Foss's cash flow course and it was fantastic. It was like a free 5-day course and it just like put us on fire, engines everywhere of fixing things. And so I would say that's it. It's like first things first is expenses. So as the buyer's perspective, I'm like, okay, how, like, can I make sure we pay the note? Like, is there money left? Like, how quickly will Steve and I be able to take home an actual salary? Is there room for growth of all these new services that I want to bring on? Because nothing just happens for free. There's licensing or products or whatever it may be. And so kind of split braining it, I mean, the buyer and the seller, we took all of the expenses for like 1 year and went through. It was like, is it necessary? Can it be sourced somewhere cheaper? Or is it a mandatory thing that we have to have? And we cut a significant amount of money off of that, right? So, I mean, when you're getting sellers ready or sell ready, that's a huge thing. But that's as the buyer, what I'm also looking at is, everyone always has those, what are they called? Like, give backs or write-offs, where they put them back in.
Chargebacks.
Chargebacks, thank you.
Yeah.
And so it's like, we found a lot more, right, that we'd be able to get rid of. And I think that was really big. But then, okay, so what's our mix? Is it how much of our cash patients or how versus Medicare versus commercial? What's that really looking like? Because I want to bring in, I'm really intrigued by the idea of becoming an insurance broker and doing the whole Medicare thing. We already do the consultations. why not then make an official and get that commission off the back end and really truly help people make the best decision for themselves?
Sure.
I'm thinking about bringing in a clinic where that would be for the people under the 65. There's a great like membership-based clinic for people get super high deductible insurances for major medical issues, but it's using this membership that's going to cost them about $1,000 a year to get like basically free generics and access to primary care, annually, or as much unlimited primary care. But it's, what's that mix of patients look like? If, the 6,000 prescriptions we're filling monthly doesn't quite support those initiatives, then it might not be worth the time and energy. So it's trying to find that, here are the big ideas. Here what I hear all my uber successful pharmacy friends doing, and I know we can do it too, especially because I think we are in a small town and that makes a difference. We don't have a lot of competition, but I have to make sure that the patient mix is there. My radical thought on patients or prescriptions, I'm never going to get rid of dispensing, right? It's not the moneymaker, but it's the marketing. It's what's bringing people back into the pharmacy every single month. And I taught this when I was at Ananda often. It was, how many businesses do you know that people come in routinely every 30, 60, 90 days and are holding a piece of paper that says, hey, here's what's wrong with me, right? Here's exactly what I need. So what are those back-end opportunities that we can then help them with, whether it was Ananda CBD or diabetic shoes or, list 72 other ideas. And so for me, I want to keep that lifeblood of knowing that we have a solid core group of patients that are walking in our door. But my forward thinking is, what are we going to do with them moving forward? What are we doing to look at that lifetime value of the patient, not just the margins we're making on their lisinopril or the money we're losing on their Ozempics, right? Like that type of stuff.
Well, you hit it on the head early in this in your comments, and you talked about cash flow. Now, cash flow is not something that I think is taught in pharmacy school, and from my years of I was very fortunate when I was 29 years old. I was in a position in a company where where cash flow was. I had a crash course in cash flow because we were doing $220 million in sales we had 5 suppliers and we had 60 customers. And some of the customers were buying, a few $1,000,000 at a time. And if they paid late, I didn't have the money to pay those suppliers. And so I learned really quickly, you can be really profitable, but if you don't have proper cash flow, you will go out of business. And so and I've certainly, like any company, especially a startup back in the early days of RMS, cash flow was just always a nightmare. And so that's something for new people looking at pharmacies that they need to really consider. And I'm sure you're considering that. You've already mentioned it. But it is because you can't just suddenly launch all of these new programs if you don't have some cash behind being able to do it, right? I mean, there is an investment in every one of these things. And so I thought it was really a great point that you were looking at ways to save money so that you didn't destroy your cash flow while you're trying to implement. And that is a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. It's terribly hard. And, I had a pharmacy student on rotation here a few months ago. And we were supposedly, I don't know how this happened, but in Southern Illinois, we're like a premier pharmacy spot to go for part of rotations, which is really cool. But we started asking why. And they're like, well, because you teach us a little bit about business. You're teaching, otherwise we just have chains to really go to. And so we're getting them involved with the wholesale ordering or helping them understand how the different margins and price points work and insurance works, because no one knows what. The first thing my dad says to each one of them when they sit down, and maybe you have to edit this out, but do you know what DIR fee stands for? And they'll be like, no. And like, he's like, it means the devil. And so then it's like we give them this crash course on what PBMs and insurance because they have no clue. But they always will say, they're like, oh, I've had a pharmacy accounting course. You're like, okay, what does that actually teach you though, right? Because it's not.
Right.
And that's the same whether you're a dentist or a hairstylist or whatever it is. That was what PDS was built on, was that E-Myth. And it was just because you are insert any profession does not mean you know how to own that business or how to operate that business. Unless you're an accountant, probably then you do. But then you probably have leadership and other issues. you don't know the numbers part of it.
Yeah. Then you're not willing to take risk.
Exactly.
I might have to edit that out. Sorry to all of our accounting friends out there.
Yes. Much love to everyone. But, yeah.
So, are there, let's see, you're looking now, let's look at two different parts. In the pharmacy, in the back end, are there any specific metrics and things you're looking at? And then we'll also in the front end of your business.
Ooh, metrics. That's a good one. I wish I could rattle off of like, hey, here's my KPI calculator because I have them all in the back of my head of like what I'm wanting to do. There's I think that's something I've learned since going into this business is your day starts off how you can make your to-do list of what you would like your day to look like, but then the reality happens of patients coming in, employee fires. We had a break-in this weekend, so it's been dealing with that. So it's like just throw everything out the window, right? So like I have this vision of this KPI calculator that I have from friends of the industry that I would just love to dig into. But payroll's a big thing for me right now. I'm really looking at what's the optimum amount of people we need in the pharmacy setting. You know, of course, the cash, you know, what's our cash on hand? What is the expense ratio? Profit margin, of course. But I'm really, really interested on the payroll side of it right now and trying to figure out, you know, the pharmacy's just always been a dispensing and compounding pharmacy. We have a pretty robust sync program and compliance packaging and all that fun stuff. But it's like everyone's just always busy. Are we busy being busy because we let time expand the amount that we're here? Or is it that we're efficient and we're really bare bonesing it and that's why we're busy? So that's what I'm trying to figure out right now. But I can't just throw a bunch of people at the problem without fixing workflow issues, I think. But I think looking at that payroll ratio is really important because then I kind of know, okay, I can't add more people if I'm not increasing sales. So what's that look like? And that's been a really big focus of mine recently because we do have a lot of robotics. I have a lot of people. What's happening to cause those missteps?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I do think this is where technology helps with this, right? Mm-hmm. But you also have to utilize the technology you have. And, you know, in the POS world, in the front end of the business, it's changed dramatically, right? So the day of the 10,000 square foot front end pharmacy, those are few and far between. They exist in the rural areas, but not so much in downtown areas. But there's a lot of information to be gathered from these systems if you'll take that information and make business decisions. And, you know, that's my big thing is looking at the reports and actually using the reports to make business decisions. And because otherwise you're just flying by the seat of your pants and you can't do that anymore. We're not in an environment any longer where that flies. So
completely. I mean, so we've had great technology at our fingertips for years. And this goes with insert any system here, right? And so this is kind of on a newbie coming in, whether you're hiring a pharmacy manager or a pharmacy owner in training or whatever it is. But I think there gets blindness to technology because I don't really have a fear. I'll poke around in our computer system or our POS and also be like, oh, what's that? Could that make my life easier? And I'll show it to a teammate and like, I've never seen that button in my life because they look at the buttons that they see, right?
Right.
Or it's like, why are you ordering all of this stuff manually, going around and writing down on a piece of paper the SIN numbers for Cardinal and then going and ordering it? How can you leverage your point of sale system to make yourself just 1% a little bit more open during the day so you can work on something? So back to your previous question about the data, it's looking at your point of sale reports of saying, okay, these are cash products. What are some trends that I'm seeing? Am I seeing sunscreen starting to move or poison ivy stuff? I'm selling a heck of a lot of calamine lotion. Well, see that in your daily reports and then say, okay, is there something kind of like the expenses? Is there a good, better, best in that OTC product? Good probably be, the leader brand calamine lotion, which has its time and place, and probably some hydrocortisone cream. But what about that next step? Is there Zanfel? That's a $30 product that actually works for people getting rid of the oils in their skin, but has a heck of a lot more margin in it. And then there's their compound, right? I love the idea of thinking the good, better, best when it comes to OTC products. Give people options. You don't have to keep 20 of each on the shelf. I think it's like
Right.
2 or 3 on the shelf, and replace them the next day, but have a conversation point with people. There's a lot of research out there that says when there's 3 options, people will often pick the middle one, and the middle one's the one that you want them to buy anyway. But use that data you're getting of what are we selling in the front end, what are we not selling,
Right.
to then become more seasonal and make, and grow those cash businesses.
And that, what part of what comes from looking at those numbers is you start learning. And, you need to understand your community, right? And so you don't want things on the shelf that don't move. There are millions and millions and millions of products that you could sell. So why have anything on your shelf that doesn't sell?
Absolutely.
And and you don't know that unless you're using the data that's available to you.
Absolutely.
And I've witnessed pharmacies that go through the process of doing inventory counting, and once you get it all set up and you get a process in place, it is not hard.
Nope.
It is not time consuming. What you end up doing is you free up time for your employees to do more important things.
Completely.
And that's really what happens. So if as you're looking now, as you're continuing to look, are there any new technologies that that you're looking at adding to your pharmacy? Any technologies you would like to change?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. A lot of my friends that I speak to in the pharmacy industry, they're like, "Oh, you don't use this computer system? You should use this one. You should use that one." Or it's like doing some, like, say we did a whole computer system update. That's like getting a heart transplant. I can't come in here as a newbie and change the computer system. That would be like, that's like write my own death sentence. So it's like, so I think it's finding what is working, how do we work, what's working, what's not working, where are the team's pain points? Because they'll tell you. It might just take a little bit of time for them to find that comfort level. But then it's like, okay, what can we do with what we already have? I firmly believe that we're probably only using 50% of the capacity of what we're using with our computer system. So what can we do to keep on evolving that and keep on evolving training? So I don't think there's anything drastically new. Like, we have great Parata machines, great icons. I think RX30 has done some really nice things with their workflow. So it's like, what can we do to use it even more and evolve our systems with it? But new, I talked earlier about, thinking about the insurance broker, the clinic, the PCP clinic, and having that associated with the store. I'm really interested in remote patient monitoring, where we can work with a medical biller or we work with a provider to bill some of those things. But before I can add on all those like really cool, sexy new things, I have to make sure that our workflow is set. Otherwise, we're just adding craziness on top of it. So I'm trying to think about it in new ways as well. So like the remote patient monitoring, I think, how do I bring on a new person when the cash flow is not there yet for them? And so it's like, am I doing profit sharing with them? How do I give them ownership in that, giving them access again to my marketing central of people, my 6,000, prescriptions we do every month, giving them access to that, but say, hey, if you help me create this program, you'll get a nice slice of the pie too. And we just keep on building it together. And that can work with the insurance thing. That can work with the membership thing. Because I don't have the cash flow right now to bring on full-time employees for them to get sucked into counting prescriptions. So it's rethinking what employment and partnerships can look like within the existing business. But everything keeps on coming back now to how do we find more time for my existing people, because I want them to evolve with me. I want them to grow into these roles if they're interested. So I hope they are, because I'm really excited about them. But it's different. It's new. It's scary, but exciting.
And exciting and for a lot of people an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
I think and I think that's also one of the things you find that's how you get some buy-in
Yeah.
when you're going to make changes, right? So you've got to get them involved. Um,
Mm-hmm.
One other comment, one thing that I see oftentimes is, people when they're looking at technology, they see this new shiny thing and they go, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I need that. But what I would always caution people of is look at what your system can do and what you don't
Mm-hmm.
know and evaluate. First of all, what would you do? If you had that new shiny thing, what would you change?
Mm-hmm.
Because I also see that, you said you think you're probably using 50% of the capacity of the system.
Mm-hmm.
And I would tell you from my own experience that would be a high number for the average pharmacy.
Yeah.
I think that our average customer uses 20% of the capacity of the point of sale. And, we have some that are using 80%, and I
Mm-hmm.
love those people.
Right.
It's terrific when you get people that are using your system to its capacity or close to
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. But that would be one thing I would caution any new owner. Yeah, before you say I got to throw out this system, because I've seen this. Well, I worked on
Mm-hmm.
this system at this other place I worked at, and I loved it, and I don't know this system, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
replacing it, and that's always, I think that's an unfortunate thing. So
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that you're taking that approach.
Yeah.
Not because you have our system, because you actually don't. So
I
there's
don't.
that. So,
So yeah, that
so,
kind of, yeah.
but, um,
It goes back to what we were talking earlier, Brad, about the expenses, right? So like
mhm,
one of our big things was going through the expenses and then asking ourselves the question, do we still need it? Can it be done cheaper? Can it be done, or do we absolutely have to have it? And it's, once you par down that list of things that you know that you have to have, it's how do I go and reintroduce myself to these groups? And it's been an interesting thing because like I know how I would have done it at PDS or Ananda. I was saying, yeah, let's onboard you. Let's start from ground zero. Whereas I've had some companies be like, it's going to be a $500 fee to re-onboard you. I'm like, no, just treat me like I'm a new customer, right? I want to know what it is that you can offer me. It's our website company. They have a lot of add-on fees. Well, help me understand what they are to make sure I'm using them to their fullest capacity because I want to keep you. Help me help you keep me, and
sure, absolutely.
encourage that, go through the expenses, but then have a conversation with your point of sale company. Have a conversation with your various vendors to make sure you're leveraging them to their fullest capacity because they've probably launched new technology that or services that you may not know about, or the previous owner or manager just never really liked that side of it, but maybe you see opportunity. Reintroduce yourselves because that's going to make sure that the investment you're making in these expenses and these technologies is being maximized. And
Yeah.
if you're still not seeing the value, if you don't understand it then maybe it is time to go and look for something else. But I think that's a really powerful 1-2 punch that maybe a lot of people don't talk about.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a great point. So, um, the, one of the things that is a challenge in a case like yours is you're not a pharmacist. So you have to, that's a big factor. You have to, because pharmacists are expensive. So you have to
Mhm.
factor that in. Uh, and I'm guessing, obviously you believe if you go through with this, you'll believe that you can offset that additional cost with what the value you can bring.
Yeah,
Um,
I think we're in a good position right now, or a fortunate one is that, so there's my dad who is a pharmacist, and for the longest time was probably the only pharmacist here, but then we do have two others, and they're the ones who are the main pharmacist here. He's kind
sure.
of the backup, if you will, and can step in as needed. So I think that's kind of, we have that going for us in a way, but it's, if I want to continue to grow, like I'm really interested in the whole sphere of functional medicine and functional pharmacist out there. Okay. If I was a pharmacist, I could go learn that myself, but I can't, right? Like there's probably functions I can learn, but I still can't. There's a little bit of a lot of a line actually. So it's finding that it's hard to even get money lent to you if you're not a pharmacist. You have to have a passionate story, and thank goodness I have my career. But
Hmm.
I think finding pharmacists that I can really blend with, and the ones I have here are fantastic and trust. And, this weekend, like I mentioned, we were broken into and my dad was out of the country. And so Alyssa stepped in and was my pharmacist voice, right? Because she knows a whole heck of a lot more about the law and the DEA and that than I will. And I think as this, if you're not a pharmacist, or you don't, if you're a kid of a pharmacist and didn't go to pharmacy school because you didn't understand chemistry or math like you probably should, but have a business brain, I think there is an option for you here. Find those partners, and then you have to have that humility to be like, hey, I don't know. And I'm trusting you to help me figure this out. And I think that's a journey we're still on because we're still learning each other, but I'm really confident that we can do that, and I can help them grow into their careers as well, because they've only been exposed to being a dispensing pharmacist, which has so much beauty and customer care into it. But it's like, what's that next level look like? Right? Like, sure. I can help show them that way. And then if we can all kind of come together, the cash flow will come, and I can keep on growing and growing and growing and helping incentivize them more personally or get more folks or whatever it may be. And I think that's a really interesting lens of helping them understand what can this look like. It doesn't have to look like the traditional pharmacy that it once was, even though we're in a small little town.
Well, there's so many places, and we're going to have to wrap up, but there's that hit a spot with me because I constantly tell people when I'm asked, my number one asset at RMS is the employees. And if you get your employees on the team and you get them to buy in and you give them, and you do this by, I believe you do this by treating them with respect, giving them opportunities everywhere you can. In our line of work, we have a great PTO plan. We have we have benefits and so forth that we can do, and of course we're a little more corporate. But the whole thing is we get this buy-in, and then they treat the customer. The customer wins. The customer is treated more professionally. The all-around customer experience is a lot better, and that drives people to come back.
Yeah.
And that's a giant difference between what an independent can do and what a chain can do. And and so I just thank you for bringing that up because it's an incredibly important part of what we do here, and I think it really shows to our customers, how much we care about them and how much we care about the employees. So, words of wisdom, parting words of wisdom.
I think as you kind of just kind of alluded to, we could probably chat here for many, many hours. I have a lot of opinions and a lot of things to say, but when I first came on and we finally made the decision that we would be telling the team why I was here, because at first it was kind of like, they were like, why is this girl lingering around here? And then we finally decided to host an all hands meeting and tell them what was going on, that we were getting it Mark ready for a retirement is how we talk about it often. And I started again with my why, and I started again with some of my life mantras. And I think it's always really important to start with that when you're getting into a new team and a new environment, whether it's at a corporate job or whether you're becoming a new pharmacy manager or you're thinking about buying something, or you've already taken over a store. And I pulled up my slide deck from that day, and there was 6 of them. And it's like, we're here to make great things happen for everyone. We're always focusing on that outcome for the patients, for the team, and for the pharmacy. That's kind of what we were ending on there a little bit ago, Brad, of take care of your team, they'll take care of your patients. I also shared that I always rather know than always wonder. So be bold, have fun, learn a lot. There are no regrets, only mistakes. And that's kind of how I'm really thinking about my time here. This could still end up where Steve and I moved back to Connecticut or Kentucky, and that was just a really interesting chapter in our lives. But I think the other thing is with your teams, in any leadership role you're in, 2 other of my other things is I'm always almost put together, right? So it's like, I know, and again, enough to be dangerous in a few different topics, but there's always probably just a little something missing, or I missed a step. And, with that, we get to be human, right? And so if you make a mistake, just owning up to me like, yeah, I didn't think about that. I really appreciate you bringing it up. Or, you know what, that was a miss. And I'm so sorry. I'm a human and we are going to keep on moving forward. And I try to have that mindset with them too. We're all just trying to do our best here. And then my last two things, aim just to be 1% better every day. Kind of mentioned that earlier, the whole James Clear thing. There's a great video about that. And then my last thing, you asked for words of wisdom. I've given you way too many here, I guess, or at least I think there are words of wisdom. But one of my mentors, Dan Bonemos, gave this to me when I was working for him. And it's, I don't know if you can see, it says, nothing is written in stone, but it's written in stone, right? And which is like the kind of the funny thing. And honestly, it sits right here. And that reminds me that one, you know, things can always change and evolve. And as I'm talking, you know, pharmacy doesn't have to look like it did a year ago, 5 years, 10 years ago. It's not going to look anything like in the future. And then also when we're talking to the team, if anytime you're hearing, well, we don't do it that way, or that's not how it's done. Well, hey, nothing's written in stone. What do we want this to be? Let's create this together. And I think that's a really great mindset to be thinking in this transition of pharmacy and ownership and just the industry in general. I think that's what I would leave everyone with.
Well, those are great words of wisdom. I think I love it. I also think that the pharmacy, regardless of what you end up deciding, the pharmacy has been in great hands with what you're doing, what you're teaching, and yeah, I wish you and your husband the best of luck in this decision. But it sounds like an exciting time. So, Samantha, thank you for sharing all of your thoughts today. Thank you for being with us, and we look forward to hearing more, and we can have you back down the road.
Yeah. Thank you so much for creating the space, guys. Like, you know, these are the types of resources that pharmacies need. So thank you for having me and for creating a space for people to do awesome things.
Very welcome.
All right.
Cheers.
Talk to you guys later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
The RMS Climb Checkup is the roadmap to maintaining a healthy pharmacy business. Schedule your Climb Checkup with an RMS pharmacy expert today.